Hey everyone, DJ Short from Roto Worlds here, back for our weekly fantasy baseball Q&A. We're here Tuesdays. Today is Tuesday, all messed up after the holiday weekend, the unofficial start of summer with Memorial Day weekend. Of course, hopefully, you recognize that for all the right reasons, but it is the unofficial start of summer. Today is Tuesday. That's usually when we do our fantasy baseball Q&A. So that's why I'm here today with you. I will be here for the next 30 minutes, taking your fantasy baseball questions, waiver wire pickups, trades, roster decisions, anything you have on your mind. We can also just talk regular baseball. We can talk betting, anything you got on your mind. Let's roll with it. I'm going to give some folks some time to get in here. Pretty interesting weekend, of course, a long weekend. It was really nice to see Liam Hendricks back yesterday after his battle with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Wasn't great in his return, but to me, already comeback player of the year. We also saw a comeback of Mike Soroka. I believe it's been 1,000 days since he's pitched in a major league game. So back on the mound last night against the Athletics. And if you remember what Mike Soroka looked like when he first came up, he's kind of slight looking. He's put on some muscle, some mass there, really grown into his body. He was very young when he came up in the majors, so it looks different than I remember him. So kind of a so-so first outing back, but awesome to see him back in the majors. Aaron Judge is on fire. 11 home runs in his last 15 games, hit 2 homers. Um, Against the Blue Jays, 11 homers last 15 games. Like I said, I tweeted something out this morning with the tear that Judge has been on. The Guardians have 13 home runs as a team for the entire month of May. I was pretty excited about the Guardians adding Josh Bell during the offseason. We know they're a contact heavy type of team. I thought he'd fit into that um, style of play while also adding an element of power, but obviously he has not been exactly what I have hoped, what others have hoped. That lineup, I still think it's talented, but they've needed a middle of the order bat, and it just hasn't hasn't come to pass so far. And uh, that division is there for the taking. And we saw Royce Lewis come back with the Twins and hitting a homer, game tying single, all that great stuff. Again, he's one of those guys like if he could just stay on the field, he could be a monster for sure. So awesome to see Royce Lewis back on the field. Mike Soroka, two players who are ultra talented, just need to stay healthy. And that's where we will start right now. Mitch with a question: is Soroka a reliable rest of season or just a streamer? I guess we'll see. When Max Fried comes back, it's still probably going to be like All Star break before we see Max Fried. I also just don't know how many innings Soroka can reasonably be expected to throw. He's had all the injury history. I would work just start to start, week to week with Soroka and kind of see where this leads. I think the strikeout rate is going to lag with Soroka, and this is kind of where it was even when Soroka first came up and was a solid fantasy performer. The strikeout rate wasn't quite there. We'll see over time how this develops. I think he's worth rostering in most mixed leagues, but you're probably not going to start him every matchup. I think he kind of fits into that fourth or fifth starter in a mixed league type of area. So yeah, I think he should be rostered, but he's kind of more wait and see for me to get back to the level that he was before. But being a pitcher on the Braves and being a passable pitcher, 3 runs in 6 innings, that kind of stuff, that can win you a lot of games with the Braves. So I am excited and just happy to see Soroka back on the mound. Please order these 3 players rest of season: Royce Lewis, Matt McLain, Ellie De La Cruz. Very interesting question. McLain off to a very hot start. Royce Lewis, showing what he could do yesterday. I expect him to play a lot of third base there for the Twins and be a potential lineup fixture. Ellie De La Cruz is the big question, right? I think we could see De La Cruz up at any time, any day. Who knows? You know what I mean? I think De La Cruz is just very tantalizing, very exciting. I'm worried about the strikeout rate with De La Cruz, to be honest with you. I think you have the order right here, which is kind of a little crazy. I think if you want to put De La Cruz ahead of McLean, that's perfectly fine. I think De La Cruz is going to be like a StatCast breaker, like O'Neal Cruz, but the ability to make consistent contact, where is that going to fall? Especially first stint through the major leagues. So potential fantasy superstar, but I am a little worried about his ability to make consistent contact. I think Royce Lewis's position is on lockdown as long as he could stay healthy. McLean and De La Cruz could eat into each other a little bit, so we'll see. But I think you have the right order, at least off the top of my head right now. Brian, is Dustin May droppable in a redraft league? I think so, but it depends on the scope of your roster and how things look. There's a lot of injured players right now, a lot of injured pitchers. So I get it if you don't have the roster space, if he's taking up a bench spot that could be used more wisely. Sure, he's droppable in that case. But if not, and you have an open IL spot, like just leave him there, see how things develop. But for me, I think it's totally plausible that you can move on um, and utilize your roster in a different way. Before we move on here, just a quick reminder to download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Very useful. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in your app store today. And if you do have the app, you also get handy little notifications that tell you when this live Q&A is starting. So if you're on the run and running an errand or whatever, you would see this live chat is starting and you can hop right into it. Very handy, very handy. John, next question here. Looks like Christopher Morel has come back down to earth, back down in that he's 2 for his last 20 with a ton of Ks. He's still worth holding on to in a 10-team mixed league. I think so. Strikeouts were an issue for him last year as well. So that's going to happen. I mean, he struck out 26 times and 67 at bats. So with that power, with the good speed, there's going to be a trade-off here. And Morel was useful last year, even with all those strikeouts. I think the batting average is going to come way down, but he can provide pop and speed. There's a spot for that on most mixed league rosters, but yeah, there's going to be these kind of weeks for Morel when you're going to have to ask yourself these questions whether you should have him as a part of your starting lineup. So uh, I think we've seen the ceiling probably for him this year, but now it's like, where is the floor? You know what I mean? So we shall see. Let's see. Up next, James, will Andrew Abbott have any value rest of season? Of course, a lot of excitement with Reds prospects. Ellie De La Cruz we talked about earlier. Now Andrew Abbott, who has been a sensation this season in the minors, really blown up on the fantasy radar. Dominated in Double A, had a 36-3 strikeout to walk ratio through 3 starts before moving up to Triple A. 3.16 ERA, 46 strikeouts, and 31 in the third innings in Triple A. I'm sure we'll see him this year. It's just really hard to bank on prospect pitchers to come up and be successful right away. Abbott's, of course, going to pitch in Great American Ballpark when he comes up, make half of his starts there. That's a tough venue. But yeah, you add Abbott. It's just a matter of how proactive you want to be. But certainly when he comes up, he's going to be rostered everywhere. But yeah, with rookie pitchers, I think you just have to keep your instinctually keep your expectations in check because it doesn't always work out the first time around with prospect pitchers. So, is Reed Detmers droppable in 10-team leagues? I had high hopes for Detmers coming into the year for sure, and I still think he has a lot of potential. But yeah, I mean, he's coming off a 12 strikeout game just a little over a week ago. So that kind of highlights what he's capable of doing. But the walks have been high this year. He hasn't been pitching deep into games. We haven't really seen dominant outings from Detmers. I think at this point, he's kind of he's probably your last starter on a 10-team mixed league staff. So if there's a pitcher who you see is plausibly having more upside, I totally get it. And you can drop Detmers in a 12-team league. So yeah, I think that's understandable if you want to go that way. I don't know who your alternatives are, but certainly that's fine. The question for Jack here, and this is a fantasy football question. I am not a fantasy football person. You'll have to ask our fine staff at our Roto World football side of things. You can ask RotoPat at RotoPat. Maybe ask him this question. Next week, by the way, we are putting our fantasy football magazine into production. We're going to be talking a lot of fantasy football very, very soon. So don't know a lot about Marquise Brown and Hopkins and all that stuff. I would assume Brown's fantasy stock is going up, up, up. But I don't know the exact context. So yeah, dial up RotoPap with that question. Mitch, who would you rather have rest of the season, CJ Abrams or Ezekiel Duran when he comes back from the IL? Good question. I think, man, I think you probably have to chase Duran just because of the quality of the lineup there. I think you probably have to chase Duran just because of the quality of the lineup there in Texas. I like Abrams to an extent, but I think he's still a work in progress, and the Nationals lineup is just not very good. So I'm looking for counting stats with Duran, and I think it's probably better to get it from Duran as opposed to Abrams. Regardless of position need, would you prefer De La Cruz or Encarnacion Strand for across the board offensive potential? De La Cruz for sure. I'm assuming you mean this year, but hard to tell from your question. But De La Cruz, I mean, he can be like a 30-30 guy. Encarnacion Strand is not that player. Like, it's more power based with Encarnacion Strand, and I think we'll see him up pretty soon as well. This Reds team has a chance to be very interesting very soon. They are loaded with lots of fun prospects, lots of fantasy relevant prospects. But De La Cruz, I mean, he's in a different tier. He is in that superstar potential tier. And comparing him to O'Neal Cruz might be unfair. I think De La Cruz could be better. I think he could be on a track of like a Fernando Tatis Jr. in a couple of years. Like, he's that talented of a player. So I would go De La Cruz. So is Mike Trout still on the Angels? He is. Yeah, maybe not getting quite the superstar numbers right now, but he is still around and still doing his thing. Thoughts on Akil Badu in a deep OBP dynasty? Prefer him to guys like Weimer and Duran. I think I'd rather have Weimer long term. Badu, disappointing year last year, has been a little more respectable so far this year. I think Weimer the numbers are not necessarily pretty. He's had a bad month of May. I still think there's some fun power and speed in his profile, and the playing time, at least for now, is fairly safe. I would probably go with Weimer, even with the strikeout concern among this group that you have here. Up next, Michael will rank these starting pitchers rest of season. We have Logan Gilbert, we have Hunter Green, we have Pablo Lopez, Tyler Glasnow, who also made his return recently, Zach Gallen, Eflin, Kopech, Yuri Perez. So this is a really fun group of pitchers. I would go Gallen first, Pablo Lopez second, Logan Gilbert 3, Hunter Green 4. Glasnow 5, Eflin 6, Kopech Perez 7, Kopech 8. I think I hit all those, right? Yeah, Kopech, a little more intriguing than I thought coming into the year. Piled up some strikeouts yesterday in what wasn't necessarily a successful outing fantasy wise. Of course, you take the strikeouts, but not the ratio damage there. But he's been better than I thought he would be, at least more intriguing to me. But yeah, I would go with Perez over him. I think net what you're going to get from Perez this year will be better. And hey, I just hope Glasnow can stay healthy. Like I feel like I've said about 5 different players during this Q&A so far. Hopefully he can just stay healthy because there is ace level stuff. No doubt about that. Would you trade Webb and Royce Lewis for Josh Lowe? I would be getting Lewis. Would you trade Webb for Royce Lewis and Josh Lewis? Okay. Well, I think it just depends on what you have on your roster currently as far as your rotation. Because taking Webb away, who is very quality, maybe not like top tier fantasy ace type pitcher, but right on the cusp of that, respectable number 2. So as long as you have that starting pitcher depth, I get it. I believe in Lowe. And Royce Lewis is a really exciting talent, kind of a little bit unknown quantity wise because he's played so infrequently in recent years with the knee issues. But yeah, I think he could be a dynamic fantasy performer. So I'm into it, but it depends on the kind of depth uh, that you have. Next up, question from James. What do I think about Manny Machado rest of season? Well, first, he just needs to, again, like I've said before, just be healthy. With the hand injury that he has right now, and it's not something that's going to take him out of the mix for a very long time. Has a hairline fracture in his hand. And before that, the numbers weren't especially encouraging. I don't know what to really put that toward as to why we're seeing the quality of contact just drop off considerably. Uh, Average exit velocity prior to the injury, 89.1 miles per hour. It was 91.5 last year, 93.1 miles per hour in 2021. So the expected batting average was 213. I guess what you got to look to here, not really striking out more than he did last year. It is higher than it's been in the past, but I mean, you got to think if he's healthy, he can turn it around. Although I will say, anytime there's a hand injury, you have to have a little bit of concern about that. So we'll see. But yeah, I think most importantly, he just needs to get back on the field. Timothy, 12 team, been holding on to Andres Menes, but no signs of life so far. Worth holding on based to last year, or should I move on? Yeah, it is frustrating. The lack of hard contact from Jimenez, been one of the weakest hitters in the majors so far this year, um, for sure. So it's not like bad luck is driving him down. I was expecting a little bit of regression, but not to this extent. So it's certainly been discouraging with Jimenez. I would at least keep him on the bench if you can. Having that middle infield depth is never a bad thing, I think. But yeah, I think for the time being, you could probably bench him. The speed does give him relatively, uh, safe floor fantasy wise. But yeah, I would not blame you at all for one, either dropping him, or two, at least just keeping him bench for the foreseeable future until we see something come together here. 14 team quality start league. Should I trade Dylan Cease while he still has some value? This reminds me of Giolito last year when I held him way too long. So I was out on Cease coming into the year. And the reason for that was just the control. It's just a little too problematic for me. So putting him among those fantasy aces was just not really something I wanted to do. The walk rate has remained the same as it was last year, but he's given up more in the way of hard contact. The strikeout rate is down, which isn't great, obviously, because that is what drives most of his value. Uh, yeah, let's see differences with the whiff rate here. So the slider whiff rate is way down. Every other pitch uh, is way down as well. Curveball down 10 percentage points from last year. So just all in all, not missing as many bats. The control still isn't very good. This isn't bad luck either. You know what I mean? Could you trade him while he still has value? I think so. But Cease is also someone who might be a couple of mechanical tweaks away from performing better. We know he can miss bats. Was Bryce Miller's thumping by the Yankees a one-off, or do you feel like the league is catching up to him? So Bryce Miller, in his start against the Yankees, gave up 8 runs, 2 homers. Uh, was really good before that, as we know, just was incredible, and only has walked 3 batters in 36 innings so far, which is really, really encouraging. And I think that's why you stick with him. You know what I mean? I think he's going to be less prone to blowups because of the excellent control. We know he misses bats. I don't necessarily think the league is catching up to him, but just one of those nights, and all pitchers have it here and there. He wasn't going to be perfect day in and day out. William, with AJ Hinch letting Zach McKinstry hit leadoff, do we expect his recent success to continue, or is it a ride the wave situation? It is a ride the wave situation with McKinstry. He's had his moments before in his career where we've kind of paid attention to him. Briefly with the Dodgers, he was on the radar a couple of years ago. There's some pop and speed here a little bit, so I get it if you want to chase after it in a mixed league for now, deeper mixed league. I think probably not sustainable value over the long term, but gets the volume at the top of the Tigers lineup. The Tigers are better than I expected, and yeah, I think getting that, being able to lead off with the speed is what I think drives the value. But there's some pop here too. But yeah, there's another question here. Would you take McKinstry or Andres Jimenez rest of season? I would take Jimenez to be the better player over the course of the season. I think when it's all said and done, McKinstry could fall into a platoon role or utility role again. And Jimenez is playing every day. You know what I mean? Jimenez just signed that long-term deal with the Guardians. The defense is good, has good speed. So I would bank on Jimenez being the better player rest of season, in my opinion. Thoughts on McCarthy now that he's back up? Jake McCarthy with the Diamondbacks. I was aggressive on McCarthy going into drafts this year. I have to admit, and not surprisingly, there's a couple of my teams who are not doing very well because I made the wrong call out there on McCarthy. I mean, I don't really know what to expect here, but what we saw last year, I don't think it was completely phony or anything like that. So I think he should be picked up in leagues where he was dropped. Let's just kind of see how this plays out. I think he could be a respectable player in mixed leagues. Gives you, speed certainly, some pop as well. We'll just see if he can get hot and maintain that moving forward. So we'll see. But I think he's worth picking up in leagues where he was dropped for sure. Just a reminder here before we move on, Sunday morning means MLB leadoff. Watch exclusive live games all season long on Peacock this week. You can check out an NL Central battle between the Cardinals and the Pirates in Pittsburgh, one of the most beautiful stadiums in the majors. Catch the action live this Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. And if you do watch it, you watch the post game, you can see my picks. My betting picks for the day. I make 3 picks every Sunday for our MLB Sunday leadoff game. This past Sunday, I hit all 3 of them. So if you want to make a little bit of money, I'd recommend you check it out. Had a very successful day on Sunday. So, all right, John, we have a couple more minutes here, just so you guys know. Rank these outfielders rest of season: Verdugo, Gurriel, Nootbaar, Bryant, Eloy Jimenez. Jimenez to the top. Gonna go Gurriel, Verdugo, Nootbaar, Bryant, which is kind of crazy. Bryant's in Coors Field, right? Like he should be higher, but to me, he doesn't deserve it at this point. It was also good to see Jimenez come back and have a good day. So a lot of players making their way back who can help fantasy rosters. Jimenez is, ceiling with Jimenez. It's not even close. Like he's in his own category from these guys. It's just a matter of, again, like I've said with like 10 players so far on the show, just stay on the field. That's all we want. All right, William. Jonah Heim is on a small slump, and Mitch Garber, I assume, Garver, excuse me, is supposed to be coming back with a shallow catcher waiver wire. Is Heim a hold, or should I look somewhere else for a catcher? Hang on to Heim for sure. I think when Garver comes back, like they'll be creative here. Garver could mostly DH, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't panic here on Heim. I think what we've seen from him this year in general has been very positive. And the offense there with the Rangers is very, very good. So I would be careful about making a snap decision there with Heim. Definitely hold on to him. Lou, with a question: if Lars Nootbaar gets IL, is this the moment for a Jordan Walker call up? So let's see if we can find any latest on Nootbaar from leaving the game. So back issue here with Nootbaar. I did see him leave the game, and I don't know if there's anything new other than just saying like back spasms and stuff like that. But when I initially heard news of the injury, I was thinking about Jordan Walker too. I think he should probably be rostered in leagues where he was dropped as well, just on the chance that he comes up. Certainly, to me, that would make sense that he would be kind of the logical guy to call up. But pay attention today, see how this goes. If there's any latest news on Walker, but certainly, I think if Walker's out there, you should go scoop him up. Have time for another question or two. So if anything's on your mind, just pop it in here in the chat. If I don't get to you, you can find me on Twitter at DJ Short. Happy to help. All right. So, John, where are all the Josh Young apologies? All the love is for Jordan Walker. Young is likely leading your fantasy team if rostered in home runs. Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I wasn't really drafting Josh Young in fantasy drafts this year. I was a little concerned about the ability to make contact, but and it's still a concern, honestly. But he's been very good. 283, 11 homers, 35 RBIs. He's part of a really good lineup there with the Rangers. Like I said a few times during this chat, Young is really putting a hurting on lefties. Has a 1049 OPS against lefties compared to 767 against righties. So I think he would prefer that it's flip flop there. As far as being an everyday player, but still good stuff. Not necessarily what I would have expected coming into the year. Okay, last question here, probably before we go. JD, can you rank Cease, Lynn, Kopech rest of season? Not as obvious as maybe we think, and have to start wondering if this Cease will put it together with his control issues and low K rates of late. Very good question. Very good question for sure. Lance Lynn recently has been better, so maybe you go with that. But while Lynn has been better, he's pitched against the Tigers. We've been, I just gave him a little bit of credit, but still not a super powerful offense. He also walked 5 batters in that start on Friday. Royals before that, Guardians before that. So not necessarily great offenses. So I can't say I love any of these pitchers right now. You know what I mean? I think on upside alone, you still probably put Cease at the top. I don't know what I'm getting from Lynn from start to start. I don't trust Kopech either. I think you have the right order, but I'd be going start to start. None of them are slam dunks. I would look at the matchups. I guess it's better and they're in the AL Central, even though they're not pitching against their AL Central foes as much as last year, obviously with the more balanced schedule. But yeah, I think you have the order correct in terms of pure upside, but I'm still not loving it. Not loving that trio right now, that's for sure. That'll do it for me. Thank you guys for your questions today. And again, if I didn't get to yours, you can hit me up on Twitter at DJ Short. Remember to subscribe to Circling the Bases wherever you get your podcasts. If you listen on Spotify, you could like it, give us 5 stars, whatever their rating is. That would be cool. Rate and review. Also, on Apple Podcasts. We have a new episode coming tomorrow. Myself, Scott Pianowski from Yahoo. Waiver Wire Wednesday. We each offer 5 players we are thinking about, we're high on for picking up in mixed league. So definitely check that out. Thanks so much, and I will see you again next week.